truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe when we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. We back the badge, we guard the border. We love our guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell.
Oh yeah, here we are, red, white, and raisin hell on a Wednesday here on Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. What's going on, everybody? How many people who got in early, like the regulars do, you guys are always the first ones into the bar, which is awesome, were really, really confused and maybe even a little bit pissed when you saw this as your placeholder screen? All right, tell the truth now. This was up there. Tell the truth. How many people got really, really mad? Because if you look on my responses on the comments on my social media where I posted that, a lot of people are ticked. What's the matter with you? Donald Trump didn't cheat. Donald Trump isn't the one we got to worry about. It's the Democrats. Democrats we got to worry about cheating. What is this? Don't let Trump cheat in 2026. He's not the problem. Let me get into the chat real quick. Let me turn down the music a little bit too. Good vibe this morning, by the way. I've been ripping AI for the background vocals that I've been getting in the last few days. The quality has been a little bit less than stellar, but not bad today. Let me get into the chat right now and see how many people saw that and how many people got that. Kat says I was driving, so I didn't see it. Cleveland Far West Sider said, not mad, I found it creative. Yeah, it's more than creative. Let's see. Most everybody else is just getting in this morning. Marty says, I love it. I'm just going to try to jump in if anybody addressed this. These were all just greetings and salutations. CAD, Sarah, Sally, B. Morgan, Lisa, Big C, Cindy Lou Who. I love that. Joanne. There's Granny, Far West Side, SRL, Jacqueline, B. Butts, Janie, Black Belt. All these folks are in. Good morning, everybody. But take a look at it. Look at the screen right now and tell me, when you saw this when you first came on, were you a little confused? Were you a little bit mad? MRK Penny says, I get it. It's great. Yeah, I didn't make it, by the way. I wish I had. I didn't make it. Sally, now Sally's being honest. Thank you, Sally. Sally said, yes, I wondered what it meant. Well, let's think about what it meant. Let's talk about it. Let's address that as we get started. Actually, let me come back to it because I want to do my quote of the day. I got to start with my flip calendar quote of the day. I'll come back to this in a second here. So, yeah, but I appreciate the honesty there from those who were mad about that, because I get it. When you first see it, it's another one of those anti-Trump messages from the left, but we'll talk about it. Flip quote calendar of the day, or excuse me, flip calendar quote of the day. Yeah. 11th morning, second month, year of our Lord 2026. You will become as small as your controlling desire and as great as your dominant aspiration. I love it. That's the way of saying dream big. You dream small, you're going to achieve small. You dream big, you are going to be that great. You are going to have that kind of success in whatever it is your endeavor. James Allen gets credit for that one. 35 years, 35 years And the quote calendar has not done me wrong yet. Always gives me good stuff to think about. All right. Excuse me. So big show today. Coming up in about half an hour, we're going to talk to Jonathan Broadbent, Unwoke Investing, Protect Ohio Children North, and a host of other organizations that he is involved with, some of which he actually runs and owns and operates. He's a phenomenal, phenomenal patriot, and we're glad to have him. That'll be at 7:30. We're going to hit a whole host of things. After that, in the 8 o'clock hour, it'll be a little bit later because of his schedule this morning. Excuse me. But Marcell Strbich will make his return to Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. Marcell, of course, the candidate for Secretary of State, and he has got a story to tell that we're going to get into. He is, according to at least one reputable survey, one poll that Marcell has been touting over the course of the last couple of weeks, he's leading Robert Sprague, who is currently our state treasurer, who is running for Secretary of State. He's leading him by 8 points. He is appearing at one county or GOP organization endorsement meeting after another and coming away winning with hands down winning, with flying colors, defeating Robert Sprague in terms of when you're interviewed by these various organizations for their endorsement. He's just so impressive. He knows so much. He's winning these endorsements and they're picking up steam. And Marcell now has a story to tell, saying that the establishment of Ohio Republicans, which is, let's just say, a little bit less than stellar in terms of their conservatism, they're sweating and they're worried that one of their own is going to not be able to musical chair from one seat in the state government to another. And I say this without any animus toward Robert Sprague, by the way. I'm just pointing out that he is one of the select few currently in a position in Ohio elected office, statewide office, ready to bounce to the next one. And there are a host of them. In fact, there's a video out there that Marcell's team put together that is kind of very, emblematic of that. It symbolizes and shows that. It explains it very, very well. So I've got nothing against Robert. And if Robert is our next Secretary of State, I certainly hope that he is going to do a phenomenal job of protecting and preserving our elections, but doing much, much more than that, including investigating about fraud, something Marcell has committed to do. But the reality is Marcell is winning this race because of the way he's campaigning, because of his ideas. And Robert Sprague has almost looked disinterested at times, coming up basically with talking points that mirror or echo what he just heard from Marcell. Because right now he's the treasurer, and now he's got to find a way to get into and lean into the election integrity aspect of what he wants to be in his next job. So it's a really big deal. So we're going to talk to Marcell about his accusation, and his accusation is a strong one. I'll give you a spoiler alert. He says that he was approached by someone on the Central Committee, State Central Committee, and basically offered a bribe, a job in the Secretary of State's office if he drops his campaign. If he drops his campaign and lets, his opponent smoothly ride into the office, or at least into the nomination, and then to office, he'd have a job waiting for him. It's a pretty strong accusation, and he makes it very clearly and directly online. And he's going to make it very clearly and directly right here. So there you go. So we're going to talk to Jonathan Broadbent and Marcell Strbich this morning, and I'm looking forward to both those things. Now, back to, and let me go ahead and kill the vibe music here. I've had my share of it, which I really, really enjoyed today. Let's go back to this question: how many people were really mad when you saw this morning? Let me get back into the chat. Let me make it look a little bit prettier there for you. Okay, let me get back into the chat now. And see how many people got it and how many people were angry about it. Let's see. Yes, I wondered what it meant, said Sally. There's the headline. I think that meant to say headline, number one, Rhino. Then read further. Let's see. Rum JC says if you just read the headlines, you're going to get mad. But as soon as you read the first line, you know something's up. Correct. That is exactly correct. The libs would just follow because it had an appearance of being anti-Trump, says Far West Sider. You are also correct. Then we got a few comments about Marcell and Sprague and the musical chair cycle. And okay, so let me just state the obvious for those who haven't figured it out yet. I posted this, and it is flying around in a lot of other places on social media too. But I posted this up because I wanted to see what people's reaction was. Because my first blush reaction, whoever said that on the chat is right. Don't let Trump cheat in 2026. You read that headline, you immediately think it's anti-Trump, and you immediately get mad. What do you Trump cheat? What are you talking about? Why is this CNN headline? Why is this MSNBC, Huffington Post, radical leftist headline up there about Trump cheating elections? We all know that it's the Democrats who cheat in elections. What are you talking about? Let's read it some more. Don't let Trump cheat in 2026. Demand voter ID. Demand proof of citizenship. Demand paper ballots. Demand in-person voting and same-day results. We'll stop that, Trump, from cheating. We'll do all of those things. And by now, when you listen to them each individually like that, it should be fairly obvious what we're talking about here. This is what one would call reverse psychology. The Democrats think Trump is the cheater. And so obviously the goal here, the message here, is to stop Trump. Let's stop Trump by doing all of these things to make sure he can't cheat. And yet, of course, these are the things that the Democrats do to cheat. And what they hate so much is the idea of the SAVE Act. They hate the idea of voter identification, proof of citizenship, one-day voting, paper ballots. They don't like the things that make it harder to cheat. So the way we get them on board is we take advantage of TDS. Reflexively, everything that Trump says to do, the Democrats say, no, we'll do the opposite. As we've said for, since really 2016, when he first ran, 2015, when he started his campaign, and we started to see Trump derangement syndrome really become an epidemic, and then really spread like a pandemic through the left, Democrat voters, Democrat ideologues. If Trump says, I am coming out with a forceful executive order saying we are pro-oxygen in the United States, oxygen should be the primary gas that we choose to breathe here in the United States. Reflexively, the lunatics in full TDS pandemic mode would hold their breath until they turned blue and fell over. Because if Trump says it, do the opposite. If Trump says don't do it, do it. So there's the message. In order to secure the elections and stop Trump from cheating, we need to enact photo ID. We need to enact proof of citizenship. We need to enact single day. No more mail-in balloting other than the former required mail-in balloting by way of absentee for people who are in the service, people who are traveling, not at home during election day and able to cast their ballots. Just let the TDS reflexive opposition kick in. That's basically, it's a great idea. I think it's a perfect message. Stop Trump from cheating. Make sure everybody shows their photo ID. Just play with these fools. So there you go. That's why I wanted to share that. There's another one that I wanted to share this morning, and this is teasing the 8 o'clock hour when I will talk with this guy. There's Marcell's post this morning, actually from yesterday, when he basically decided to make the big reveal that he was essentially bribed with a job in the Secretary of State's office if he ends his run for Secretary of State. That's his accusation. I'm going to ask him to explain it. I'm going to ask him to, give us the truth and the facts about what he knows and what was done, because I think it's huge. Marcell Strbich is not for sale. I will not compromise my mission, values, principles, beliefs in exchange for my silence. State Central Committee member tried to coax him out of the race and bribe him with offers of a job in the soon-to-be Secretary of State's office. That's what this looks like. So we'll get into that a little bit this morning as well. All right. Before we get in with Jonathan Broadbent, which will be at about 7:30, I want to hit this, and you can see once again, I know not everybody checks this on their way in the door, what the title of the episode is and what some of the points are that we make. But the title for this morning is The Grotesque Dishonesty of Cleveland.com, which of course means the editorial board of Cleveland.com. And of course, their newspaper origin. They used to actually be more interested in the newspaper side of things, but now they're dying. And so, it's all about Cleveland.com. So the editorial board there, grotesquely dishonest. And by the way, unapologetically white. Unapologetically white. Not a single member of that board is a person of color. It's really interesting, and it'll play a role in the discussion here in a moment. But what I wrote in the descriptor today, the editorial board of Cleveland.com and the Cleveland Plain Steamer have long been purveyors of fake news, but their complete gaslighting of the people of Northeast Ohio and their raw hatred for anything to the right of Karl Marx is now next level. We will discuss, and then the Marcell story as well. So yeah, let us discuss. Let me share what brought this to my attention. Obviously, I don't subscribe to the Steamer, and I don't subscribe to the Cleveland.com or go beyond the paywall of Cleveland.com either. But here is what was available to everyone as of yesterday. Let me share this screen for you. So this is what the Steamer likes to portray as news. Although in their defense, in this case, it is in the editorial page. But this is an editorial board that, like I said, it reeks of hypocrisy in a moment. So hopefully you can see that. Let me make it a little larger for you here. Not much. I don't want to be neutral. Why more Americans are finding their voice against fascism. And I would like to issue a direct challenge to every one of the left-wing lunatics that reads this article and subscribes to this fake news service, Cleveland.com and the Plain Steamer. I would like every one of them to define fascism. Tell me what it is that you are so finding your voice against, because you don't know squat crap about fascism, communism, socialism, or Marxism. And you have no earthly idea that they are all almost identical to one another, with centralized control of government, dictatorial, authoritarian. It is true in communist countries. It is true in fascist countries. And it's so funny that the only one of the isms that these leftist lunatics has chosen to oppose is fascism, despite its almost sisterhood or brotherhood relation to the other isms that were responsible and continue to be responsible for far more death and suffering and oppression of people's individual rights around the world, around the globe, than fascism ever could have been or is now. That's what's so hilarious. I haven't seen word one in Cleveland, the Cleveland Plain Steamer, or on Cleveland.com, maybe ever, maybe in my lifetime. It's a bold claim, obviously, but I don't recall ever seeing any negative articles or editorials condemning the dangers and the evils of socialism, of communism, of Maoism, because there are so many examples of socialism and communism killing over 100, close to 200 million people in the last century alone. But no ill words about communism or socialism, just fascism, got to stop that fascism. What is it? It's Trump. Fascism is Trump. Ask them what it is. They have no earthly idea. So here's what the article looks like. I don't want to be neutral. Why more Americans are finding their voice. It's a summary of their little podcast show that they do, the leftist lunatics in the Cleveland Plain Steamer's editorial board, or on the board. As the political climate grows increasingly volatile, by the way, it is volatile due to the actions of fake news purveyors like you. More citizens who once remained silent are finding their voices and speaking out against what they see as a dangerous authoritarian drift. These stupid people. The discussion was based on feedback on recent columns by host Laura Johnston, with whom I don't have much familiarity, and the editor-in-chief of the Steamer, Chris Quinn, who is one of the most vile, reprehensible cretins ever to stain the pages of a major metropolitan newspaper, or in this case, my computer screen. An absolute stain of a human being. I could be more graphic than that, but I'll stop. Both wrote about the direction of the American politics, particularly regarding the Trump administration's policies. Gee, you think? In February of 2024, In February of 24, the election year, Chris Quinn wrote maybe the best article he's ever written, because it's one in which he gave his full confession. He confessed that I will not allow my newspaper and my staff to cover Trump fairly. I'm paraphrasing it, but that was literally the statement. I will not allow anyone to cover him fairly. He is a unique threat. He is this, he's that, he's the other thing. And we're not going to be objective. And if you have a problem with that, too bad. It's my paper, is essentially what he said, since he's in charge. And then a few days, and I remember doing that one on the radio. And then a few days later, he basically gave himself validation, and self-validation at that, by saying, wow, the response I've gotten from thousands of readers is thank you. And other newspapers have said, can we find the courage to do the same thing, to say that we are not going to be journalists. We're not going to be a free and fair press. We are going to just dial in our hatred for, and thus our dishonest coverage of, Donald J. Trump, and support anything and everything that he opposes. That's what we're going to do. That was literally what his column was. And then his follow-up column says that's what the people want too. All right. That just to give you an idea who we're dealing with here. As for Laura Johnston, a naturalized American citizen, she explained why she felt compelled to write a column about her unique perspective. I don't want to be neutral, and I don't want to look back at this time period in my life and be like, wow, I really should have said something. Maybe my experience would enlighten someone and then and get them to see it from a different perspective. And the main point of the article that she wrote is, I hate being white. All right. Another anti-white, majority, self-loathing message from an awful. The only thing I can really consider Laura Johnston is an awful. One of the affluent or angry, for the A, white female liberals. One of the worst, the ones who are at the center of no kings, the ones who are at the center of the anti-ICE and ICE out rallies and protests and riots and attacks and obstruction and so forth. She's one of the awfuls. And she hates herself for being white. She hates herself for having to she can't scrub it off hard enough. She tries all of the time, but she can't do it so that she can experience what it's like to be an ethnic minority in this country. Her column, her column highlighted the stark contrast between her experience as a naturalized citizen with white privilege and the treatment of others. People are afraid to leave their house. They're afraid to send their kids to school. They're carrying their citizenship papers with them every single day. Ooh, what a horrible thing that is. Because you know what? So do I. It's called my driver's license every damn day. And I always have it, because if I get confronted by law enforcement for one reason or another, and they say, let me see your papers. Sure, officer. You mean my identification? Yeah, it would be helpful and safe, I think, for you as a law enforcement officer to know who I am, and whether or not I am lawfully in this country, and whether I'm doing things lawfully, whether it be driving or anything else. Ooh, having to show your citizenship? She said, and I have this privilege of being blonde and blue-eyed with white skin, and no one has ever questioned my citizenship. Well, but you know what? If you are doing something, let me rephrase, not doing something, if you belong to a class of people that are breaking rules and they are on the lookout for those people breaking rules, you very well may have be stopped and questioned about who you are. And let's see your identification. It's called policing. I said this before. Put it in the context of automobiles. All right. If someone robs a bank and is seen getting into a white, Ford Escape, and literally escapes in it, and the APB goes out, a white Ford Escape in the area of Cleveland, Ohio, of downtown Cleveland, Ohio, or West Side, or whatever it is, just robbed the bank and they're getting away. Cops aren't going to stop red vehicles. They're not going to stop blue and yellow ones. They're not going to stop sedans, and they're not going to stop vans. They're going to look for an Escape and they're going to look for a white one. And if you happen to be driving a white Escape in the area at the time, yeah, you might be stopped because you look like what they're looking for. That's called investigative technique. That's called policing. That's what has to happen. And if you happen to look like what the overwhelming majority of millions and millions of illegal aliens look like, if you happen to speak that language and have any attributes that are similar to that, yeah, you might be asked, can we see your identification? Because we're looking for somebody very specific here. And you resemble that person, or you speak that language, or whatever the case might be. How about just know that they're trying to make the community safer by catching bad people, talking about the worst first, the violent criminals, and letting them, how about we just assist them? Might that be a better way to do this? Now, I don't have the time in this segment to give you the full-on article and pick it apart line by line from Laura Johnston, which I printed and I will do later because I've got some other things that I want to do here. But I will tell you this is extraordinarily important. Do not let them gaslight you. Do not let them, and I'm talking about the radical left, and I'm talking about the Cleveland Plain Steamer, who is going to go on their full-on self-loathing whiteness rant with people like Laura Johnston and people like Chris Quinn and so on and so forth. And oh, by the way, the Cleveland Plain Steamer has exactly 0 minorities on the board, racial minorities, ethnic minorities, none, 0. So they're all white, and yet they're crying and complaining about white privilege. And I just think that is all kinds of hilarious. All right. I want to take a pause here to say thank you to and to welcome in as a foundational partner to Strictly Speaking Unfiltered, the good people at Americans for Prosperity. Today's episode is brought to you in part by AFP, with whom I am so proud to partner because I've been partnering with them long before they decided to come in and financially support this show and this movement so that we can grow it to become the force and the impactful, influential show and organization that it will be eventually. They got in here on the ground floor, and I've been working with Donovan O'Neill and AFP for a long time. Their mission is first class. Their mission is essentially to help transform into Ohio from what it is to what it can be. Ohio is everything it takes to lead this nation, but we need the policies, the right policies to get there. And the Buckeye Blueprint is a blueprint for those policies. I want you to go online at buckeyeblueprint.com. That's focused on building a bolder, better Buckeye state, moving us from the middle of the Midwest to #1 in the country for economic freedom, for education opportunity, for energy abundance, which is huge, and a government that works for the people. If you love Ohio, but you know that Ohio can do better, and it can, then join us and take action. Go to buckeyeblueprint.com. That's buckeyeblueprint.com. And thank you once again to Americans for Prosperity for being a foundational partner, literally getting in on the ground floor when we need it the most to get ourselves up and rolling. So thank you to our first guest who is in the green room. So we're going to check in with him in just a moment. Stay here on Strictly. Wait, what just came up? That wasn't supposed to happen. Yeah, that was an accidental click. But this is an intentional click. Short time out, right back.
If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, My Pledge, he had written these words: America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
And there you have it. That is, that's my new timeout, at least for a while. Normally when I take a timeout in the show, I'm playing just a little bit of generic music and putting a placeholder screenshot up. But I am a huge devotee of the great communicator and all of his messages. And I love to give you President Reagan whenever I can. President Trump is a different kind of awesome, what he has done for this country. President Reagan, the grandfather of conservatism, the modern conservatism movement, is still going to always be my favorite, though. That was simply amazing. Okay, also amazing in his own right and for different reasons is my guest, my first guest this morning. There he is, the smiling face of Jonathan Broadbent. Jonathan, the chief unwoke capitalist, as you can see by his own chiron there. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I had a little fun this morning signing in. Glad to be back on with you, Bob.
Well, I see that, you're not, that wasn't off the cuff. That actually is your bio line in your Unwoke Substack. Let me see if I can share this real quick with the folks here so that people can know where to find you and to follow you and your Substack there at Unwoke Investing. There it is. Yep. And there you go, Jonathan Broadbent at J Broadbent, Chief Unwoke Capitalist. It's a great title. Tell us what it means.
So I have a background on Wall Street, and I started noticing some things even back in 2007, 2008 on Wall Street that were alarming to me. And silly me, back then I thought I actually had a job to do, and I did a big write-up on a company you may have heard of called BlackRock. Yeah. And back then I saw that there was some artificial manipulation that was steering billions of dollars into BlackRock. I found that and I didn't like it. And I wrote it up. And of course, invariably, it resulted in threats of lawsuit and, getting called into the principal's office, so to speak. And that was the beginning of the end for me on Wall Street. But since then, I have made it my life's mission to continue to talk about those things, advocate for a return to free markets and free capital markets. You can find out more about what that means at unwoke.academy. That is actually a website, unwoke.academy. I talk about these things. I do Market Minute. I expose the woke stuff, the artificial influence of far left propaganda in the world of finance.
Yeah, well, you've got me hooked. I'm gonna go to it right now, just so I already know about Unwoke Academy, but I want to show people as well, as long as we're doing unwokeacademy.com. Is it .com? Is it .com or is it .org? I'm sorry.
It's actually unwoke.academy.
Oh, .academy. I'm sorry. I I didn't type it right.
I tried to get unwoke.com, but I don't know. Somebody wanted $85,000 or something for the domain.
I know.
I was like, hey, wait, there's a dot academy. That works perfectly.
All right, there we go. So we'll share this one now, just so people can see what we're talking about. That's a great backstory, by the way. You know, you ruffled obviously some of the wrong feathers there when you exposed BlackRock and talk about this thing. So there's the unwoke.academy website.
Yep.
Jonathan is talking about. Go ahead.
I'm known for that baseball cap. I actually picked that up at a McFan meeting, Medina County Friends and Neighbors, years ago. You can't read it there, but if you go to the webpage, it says "Make America Constitutional Again." There it is.
There it is.
So,
I love that. I love that. That's a great message. Okay, so Jonathan, there's a lot of stuff that I want to get into with you this morning, and I want to start a little bit more hyper local than ordinarily, because I want to talk about your county, Geauga County, and the show that you do, radio show and online show, Voice of Geauga. I guested on it a couple of times before I started. Actually, before I had to move this show to its earlier time slot, which it is now. But I want to talk about what's going on in Geauga County, because you have a piece on your Substack, on your newsletter side, about the Geauga County censure proposal. What's going on in Geauga County, and who do you want censured and why? Tell us the backstory.
well, there's a lot to unpack here. And actually, you may be surprised to hear that this involves the entire country. And I'm actually I may surprise you by beginning in San Francisco Bay. In San Francisco, California, there used to be a vast array of small townships, small cities, communities that controlled their own destiny. They had local government, local representative government, and then some strange things happened to the way that government works in California in particular. This was starting way back, go back in the Wayback Machine, 1962. National laws were changed that required a certain type of organization if you have densely populated areas. They're called MPOs, or Metropolitan Planning Organization. And it became mandated in 1962 that many places like Cleveland, Ohio, Akron, Cincinnati, Columbus, etc., but all over the nation have these metropolitan planning organizations. So they've been off radar for decades. I grew up not knowing that they even existed until recently, when I started paying attention to who's making decisions and started to get that feeling when we go into political office that our local representatives just sort of smile and nod along and ignore us. And I wanted to know why. If we don't like something, why in the heck aren't our representatives doing the things that we want? And why do they feel betrothed? Why do they feel wed to federal laws and federal regulations? So Ohio alone has 17 of these different metropolitan planning organizations, or MPO for short. And all that really is regionalism. And I'll pause to put that into a broader, bigger context that I think everybody can get. Everybody by now, and certainly your listening audience, probably is aware that the United Nations is trying to change global government to influence American government and to control what we're able to do in America. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us are balking at that. We don't want your environmental controls or your equity and all the ill-defined, loosely defined nonsense and jargon. We don't want it. In America, we have little microcosms all over the country. There are about 450 of them. Sorry, I'm throwing out a bunch of numbers. In a moment, I'm going to get to where that factors into Northeast Ohio. But just know that these things exist all over the country. There are a lot of them, 17 just in Ohio. In Cleveland, there is an MPO that's referred to as the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency, or NOACA for short. NOACA has been, before I even knew what it was, I knew that people that I care about had been fighting against it. And for years, Bob, all over Northeast Ohio, this Cleveland-based organization has been trying to control all kinds of things. Parks and where you can plant, and forcing communities to build those bike lanes no matter what. Safety doesn't seem to factor in. And so they pull all these purse strings. And that led me into the rabbit hole. This, I know I'm unpacking a lot in a short period here. I am
Sure.
going to give your audience a resource to go and check out. I think they'll love it. It explains it beautifully. But in Northeast Ohio, around Cleveland, Cleveland sits in the county of Cuyahoga. NOACA, that MPO, seeks to control 5 counties, not just Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, but if you know Northeast Ohio, that's Lake County, Geauga County, Medina County, Lorain County, and of course, Cuyahoga. So they have these spider web strings of financial control, of grant money, building dollars, roads and bridges, construction. And now, over the last probably 10 plus years, it's migrated away from what is your project? Why do you want to do it? Is it a good project and well designed? And is the cost reasonable? Into all this woke stuff. Equity. We need to, and some of the people who are involved in the thing, Bob, they're right out on paper. They're out in front of these comments that are pure Marxism. I'm sort of paraphrasing. We feel that Northeast Ohio has the money is not divided equitably. So we're going to use the development of communities, and that includes agriculture, what you're allowed to farm and build, and zoning rights. Zoning rights are huge. What kind of construction you're allowed to do. So imagine this unelected cabal of bureaucrats in downtown Cleveland controlling virtually everything you're allowed to do in all 5 counties. That's a starting premise, and it actually gets even worse. Believe it or not, there's a huge board. I think it's 29 people, 29-ish people on the board of NOACA, and there are representatives, pardon me, from each county. The other 4 counties, those ring counties around Cuyahoga, do not have the votes to match Cuyahoga County alone. So Cleveland can override anything we decide in the ring counties. So Lake, Lorain, Medina, and Geauga can team up and decide, no, we don't want something, and we get overridden by the votes of that one county. That's far too much power. Which brings me to the post that I made. There is one person since around 2010 who has consistently been serving on the board at NOACA, once as a commissioner, and then recently as a stand-in alternative to one of our commissioners who keeps ruffling feathers. He's asking questions, he's kind of pounding the table, he's in at NOACA, and he's asking for definitions of things like, what do you mean when you say equity? How are you going to spread equity through all these counties? And he's been challenging them, which frankly is what board members should be doing.
Agreed.
But we have one in particular who's consistently been doing that. And recently, there's been a move to change the bylaws strategically, and I believe in a targeted way, to get rid of that one person. Because here's how it works. I want to unpack that just a little bit. They're overwhelmingly, the people who are on the board come from very specific roles. They're county commissioners, maybe a county engineer or somebody like that. In Geauga, because we have so small a population, we're kind of lowest man on the totem pole. We're very rural out here, a lot of country, not a lot of densely populated area. And the way the formula works for our representation on that ridiculous board at NOACA, it's based on population. So we have very few people. This gentleman in question, his name is Skip Claypool. You've met him and he's been on your show with you. Skip Claypool has consistently taken it upon himself on his own dime to go in and challenge these things. What are you doing and why? Now, let's hearken back to San Francisco Bay. Eventually, San Francisco Bay area was eroded. Government pounded on them enough that they finally caved and gave way to centralized government. I don't have in front of me what it's called. It's like AMATS or something, the Bay Consultant Group or whatever they call themselves.
Mhm.
But it's centralized government. So a lot of the stuff that you see there, all this push for, giving out syringes and needles to heroin addicts and everything, that really comes from this mandates from central governments. You may have conservative communities in the San Francisco Bay Area, but they have no voice in government anymore. It got centralized, and those people went super far left woke. Here in Northeast Ohio, we face the same prospect. Our NOACA is, you can read it, go to their website and read the stuff. It is pure far left, ultra communist propaganda. It's Marxist. They even teamed up with a company called ICLI out of Bonn, Germany, to create the strategy map for future growth in this region. So I'm going to say my last thing, and then you and I will go back and forth. There is a group called Fortify Geauga. I have the webpage up in front of me. Fortify Geauga, and that's Fortify, GEAUGA.org, created a whole dedicated tab to NOACA. It's incredibly detailed. It's awesome, and it explains the whole thing. And to step back and put that in big context, know that most of the country, if you live in a densely populated area, the chances are very good, probably in a long enough timeline, certain. There it is. Welcome to Fortify Geauga. And then that right at the top, you can see top center, there's a NOACA. Yep, that one. So, in a long enough timeline, I think it's certainty that pretty much everywhere in the country is going to face this if you're densely populated.
So, Jonathan, first of all, thank you for fortifygeauga.org. That's a great resource here. I'm going to bookmark that on my browser. What I want to know is the first, I think, question that would come to the mind of a lot of people is, why is my county involved? Why, you just laid out how Cuyahoga can dominate the other counties involved. They've got way more votes and so on and so forth. I'm a Lorain County and you're a Geauga County. And I want to know who decided in my county, did I vote on this? Did the people that I elected vote on this to say we want to be a part of the regionalism of Northeast Ohio, that we want to be a part of NOACA, that we want NOACA to make rules and designations and tell us how we can live, where we can build, what we can do, and so forth? Because I don't recall that. I've been voting for a lot of years, and I vote for Lorain County commissioners and auditors and other things like that, but I didn't vote for anybody to put me into NOACA. How am I in? Why are you in?
Just backing up one step and interjecting, that website, actually, we attribute to my wife. My wife actually served as president of that group, Fortify Geauga. She's part of a lot of people in Geauga County who've been fighting back against this stuff for years. I'm very, very proud of her and what she's done for Fortify Geauga. So I don't want to take credit.
Broadband. Tiffany's awesome. That's fantastic. I'm so happy.
Tiffany is awesome. So you're right. We don't get to vote on these things. What ends up happening through fiat and federal government mandate going back to 1962 is they installed these things and require MPOs. And because your county, Lorain, and my county have a community of any community anywhere in the county of 50,000 or more, and you effectively become required to get involved in an MPO. When this first
by whom? By whom? I'm sorry, but by whom? Who effectively requires us to do that?
Federal government. And federally, originally, when the thing rolled out, it probably looked good to people on paper because it was to coordinate the development and building of roads and bridges. And remember, in 1962, we were still building our freeway systems. So I think a lot of people were like, well, of course, yeah, the government will help us and they'll help kind of control and distribute the money around appropriately, and we can build our roads and bridges. Well, drive around Northeast Ohio now, drive around Cleveland. They ticked their eye off the ball a long time ago, and the money is going anywhere but. They're certainly not developing roads and bridges and paying attention to their mandate. They're putting it into all kinds of woke stuff and far left liberal agenda that is destroying communities, forcing bike lanes. They have these plans to try and convert huge areas into bike only and all kinds of stuff to try and dictate and control. Well, imagine that in rural Geauga.
All of that is climate change driven, right? That's one of their key points of focus, and they want more bikes, less cars, and of course, if you're on bike and not in a car, you can't live as far away. And we get into that whole centralized 15-minute city nonsense as well. That's a big part of this.
It is a big part of this. But so we're going to jump around just a little bit. I'm
All
trying
right.
to keep this linear and understandable. By the way, that program that I'm on, Voice of Geauga, my co-host is actually Skip Claypool.
Mhm.
So you can tell there's a group of us in Geauga County who were very active. And he's very knowledgeable on this. You can find Voice of Geauga streaming all over the place. You can find it and follow more. And remember, wherever you are in the country, this probably applies in some way, shape, or form to where you live. But let's go back to our county commissioners. In Geauga County, we have 3 commissioners, and each of them we elect, and they have a voice on the board at NOACA. They can get overruled, but at least they're there. Well, it turns out, allegedly, 2 of our 3 commissioners in Geauga County don't like the fact that the 3rd appointed Skip Claypool. Remember that person who goes in there and asks questions and ruffles feathers? The 3rd, the 2 commissioners teamed up, allegedly, to communicate off books and privately with the board of NOACA and change the bylaws in a way that eliminates Skip Claypool from the board. It takes away that 3rd commissioner's voice. He picked Skip Claypool specifically because he knows Skip has made it his life's mission and his job to be, I shouldn't say job, his life's mission and intention to become knowledgeable on NOACA. So here's the thing, that bylaw change that's being worked on right now, and it's caused a huge uproar in our community because we want somebody, at least one person, pushing back against NOACA. That bylaw change, if it goes through, affects exactly one person in all 5 counties, and that's Skip Claypool. That seems, it doesn't pass the smell test. It's super dubious, and it is, if it proves to be that 2 of our commissioners secretly communicated with the board of NOACA for this one strategic move to silence that one bit of opposition, that is horrendous. That's why I want to censure 2 of our county commissioners.
What have they said in response to this?
They won't respond publicly, I don't believe, because there's lawsuit pending. Skip, it's my understanding, I have to paraphrase, I haven't read the lawsuit, but I've heard from him that he believes that they have violated, again, I'm paraphrasing, he believes that they have violated sunshine laws. Because remember, the reason we have county commissioners making really big, important decisions, and there's probably none bigger that they'll make as commissioners in their tenure than whether or not to embrace this NOACA debacle. And if they are making decisions that impact NOACA and Geauga County secretly, without meetings, without votes, without public discussion, maybe Skip has a point, and maybe it is a violation of sunshine laws.
Well, there's no question about it, and to me, it's un-American. I mean, literally, we're trying to silence a voice of dissent, which is, why the First Amendment was created, so that we can dissent, so that we can, demand answers and accountability from our government, from our officials, and so forth, and to speak on behalf of the people that cannot speak for themselves. So Skip, as you say, has made this his mission, and so therefore he's public enemy number 1. So I'm glad that there is, a court system and perhaps a way for him to, avail himself of the rules and the laws to stand up for himself. But in the meantime, NOACA's power, if Skip is busy and occupied with lawsuits, and God forbid he actually is completely eliminated by way of this, this measure you're talking about, he can't do what he wants to do, which is raise awareness. To whom does he need to speak? No, let me rephrase. To whom can we speak, Jonathan, to back Skip Claypool, to support what he is doing, what you are doing, what some of the other folks in Geauga, like one of your colleagues there, Ralph Spitaleri, is doing? What can we do, to push back as well? Not just in the general fight against NOACA, which I agree with, and I've talked to John Kalis, who has been another stalwart champion of, the county rights. I mean, not creating this massive level of bureaucracy, because they're unelected. Right. I mean, NOACA is unelected. All of the member counties, those individual counties have elected members in them, but we didn't elect a NOACA board or a NOACA to govern us in any way, shape, or form. So we have the right, I think, to say we don't want any more bureaucrats. We don't want any unelected groups over whom we have no control, changing leadership, etc. So what can we do? What can people in the 5 counties? Well, I assume I was going to say maybe 4, but I assume there's people in Geauga who disagree. I'm sorry, Cuyahoga, who disagree with what's going on with that massive majority there as well.
Well, I say think big. Let's Department of Education the thing. Let's go federal and unwind the thing that started in 1962, I say. I'd love to see some of our senators and congressmen get behind a push to just abolish the things. They turned into not anything like what they were supposed to be. What was presented in 1962, and I can go back and read, I've read through some of the descriptions and the way that it was pitched. This monster, it is a Frankenstein of waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, just looking at NOACA, again, that's the Cleveland area example, but in Ohio, we've got 17 of these darn things. In NOACA, recently, they decided, in spite of all the huge potholes and just derelict bridges crumbling and falling apart, and in complete denial of their responsibilities in their job, they just hired somebody to put a mural. They painted some $100,000 or $200,000 mural or whatever it is on the side of some building. And I hear all the time about how they lavish themselves with these extraordinary big exotic lunches, and they treat themselves like royalty. Yeah. And they have these huge staff and all kinds of people. They're spending money all over the place. We have a few people like a local representative, Ohio Representative Mike Davila, is trying to sort of rein them in a little bit, maybe sort of create some Ohio legislation that puts some guide rails on that may work, maybe not. But I say, let's talk federal and get this message in front of DC and the Trump administration. We have rogue players here who are way out of control, and they are power rich. They are money rich. And here's the crazy thing. People ask all the time, and I get it. I understand it. I can understand the misconceptions and where people are, even in Geauga County. In Geauga, we pay in huge amounts of money. Most of it's sort of off radar for people. But then NOACA and a few local elected representatives are really keen to come in with that big check that says NOACA. Like, look, we got $60,000 for a park that we're building or something. And I've heard them do it. And they get all excited. And they're like, look, we get all this money from NOACA. Well, we're spending way more than we're getting. The money is flooding out of Geauga, and tiny little crumbs are coming back. That's the first thing to know. And they don't want you to know that. The next thing is everything that they do has huge strings attached. And for heaven's sakes, a lot of the money would come to us anyway. NOACA is just a pass-through organization. So if we get roads and bridges or whatever, Ohio Department of Transportation or ODOT hands out money to counties, well, instead of sending checks to 88 counties, sometimes they just send a big one to NOACA. NOACA probably keeps some of it, I imagine, and then sends a little bit of it to Geauga. And then there's like, fanfare and horns blow, and a bunch of local politicians say, look, ooh, we got a check from NOACA. And it's, once you know the numbers, it's nonsensical, because we would get that check anyway, and we'd probably get about 400% more.
It sounds a little like collectivism to me.
It's totally collectivism. Well put.
And that's a problem. That's a major problem. Jonathan, without anybody in the counties willing to stand up and fight and say, no, we're not part of NOACA anymore, What about state reps? There are state representatives in each of these counties and each of these districts. Is there anything they can do to check the power of NOACA, to rein it in a little bit, whether it's over distribution of funds like you're talking about right now, a little bit more fairly, not equitably. There's a difference. Fairly,
Yeah.
and all the rest. I mean, again, I kind of feel like we're getting into a place where we're creating more government. And as conservatives, you and I and lots of other people would very much like to have less government, less rules, less restrictions, less people telling us how to live, where to live, what to drive, et cetera. I kind of feel like that there would be state representation. Look at this. It worked. Hold on a second, Jonathan. I got a surprise for you here.
Yeah.
I didn't know this was going to happen. Just since you brought him up and spoke so much about him a few moments ago, while you were talking, I sent a link to this guy to see if.
Hey, there he is.
Good morning. We just finished the program here, and it went well.
It's perfect timing. Jonathan has been, laying out the case against you by NOACA, and Skip, you're obviously a champion here and fighting for the people of not only Geauga County, but obviously for all of the counties affected by NOACA. So I just thought I'd throw the link out to you on the off chance that you might get it in time and join Jonathan and I for a couple of minutes. But Jonathan, just before we bring Skip in, the point that I was making, or the question that I was asking you, is about, isn't there anything at the state level of government that can be done to kind of rein in this regionalism and listen to the people of these counties, especially the four counties that are being subjected to the whims of the overwhelming dominance of the vote in Geauga County?
So far, the best I've seen is from Representative Mike Davila. And as I said, it remains to be seen how much impact he can have and whether or not our Ohio legislature will get on board and actually pass something. So again, my instincts tell me, let's think bigger and go federal. I'd love to see maybe a Senator Bernie Moreno or somebody like him step in and say, enough is enough. This thing is a Frankenstein monster that has been growing like cancer since 1962. It's not doing the thing that it was designed to do and intended to do all those years ago. It's gone completely off the rails. And it is terrorizing communities. It literally is terrorizing communities. When you have, I told you about that website and building Fortified Geauga with a dedicated domain. You've spoken with John Kalis. You see what's happening to Skip right now. He's being run through the ringer. He has to defend himself in court and file countersuits just to be able to have a voice and ask questions. That is terrorizing. It is. I don't know how better to put it.
Targeted harassment. It's targeted harassment is what it is.
It's targeted harassment for sure in my book where Skip is concerned, but it's worse than that in the entire region. You have 5 counties that are under the thumb of these unelected bureaucrats. And as I've said, hats off to Skip dedicating so many years of his life to getting in there, pounding the table, digging in and asking questions. And this whole move to surreptitiously change the bylaws to eliminate his voice, to me, I don't think it can be anything but a targeted strike to silence Skip Claypool.
Right. Well said. And by the way, I like your idea about talking to Senator Moreno. I don't know if anybody has accessed him or not, but I'll talk to him about it myself and ask if he's got anything that can be done about NOACA and again, kind of forcing 4 other counties into compliance with with some of their ridiculous and radically woke ideas on how we should live and how we can live, and then also about the targeted harassment and the terrorism of one individual, Skip Claypool, who is the only voice that they seem to be concerned with silencing. So Skip, Jonathan told your story large part. You and I have talked about it. All of us have talked about it in the past, but give us an update on where we are with respect to, the intimidation, harassment, and the attempted silencing of you.
Well, a quick comment on Bernie Moreno. I have reached out to him. I'm in touch with him. I sent him information. I'm very disappointed in his response. At the end of the day, NPOs are a unconstitutional organization, not unlike the Department of Education. So they're not constitutionally oriented. They're not necessary. Number 2, the county engineers today with the Ohio tax, gas tax, get together. They have something called OPWC, and the county engineers all get together, decide which projects are going to be funded. They do that themselves, and they could easily do that with the federal dollars also. But the MPOs were created as a federal mechanism to control large population centers. That was by intent, unconstitutionally, I might add, in my viewpoint. So can the federal government do something about it? Yes. Bernie Moreno and the federal government could. Will they? No, because it's political. Because NOACA and the MPO organization nationally lobby our state senators, tell them what a good thing they are and how it would hurt the region. And by the way, Grace Gallucci is invited to the county commissioner meeting, Jonathan, and so she's going to be. They asked her to come in and explain why it is that I'm wrong and they're right. And so they're of course going to be using Grace Gallucci. They're going to use Castro to talk about communism and why communism is so great. and so it's going to be funny. But so my lawsuit, I got to talk to my attorney today. We're supposed to be amending the lawsuit that I filed on an open meeting law violation, which is an open and shut thing to me. Also, NOACA violated something called an entrenchment clause, which they tried to fix. They're trying to clean that up. But they're also violating civil rights law, federal and state, having to do with undermining elected officials. Ralph Spitaleri, they took away his vote and all the votes for the people that, or all the representation that comes with the votes, the voters that voted for him. So they're taking their voice off the table, and that's my attorney's argument is that that's a civil rights issue, and so that's part of the lawsuit. So we'll see where that all goes, but they're going to continue to make me look bad in any way, shape, or form that they can. They make stuff up, they twist, and I actually listened to the video last night that Karl Marx played at the very end of the county commissioner meeting. So in the last 2 minutes of the county commissioner meeting, they have a video that they played of me back in 2013 or 14 when I was updating as an alternate the county commissioners at the time. And actually, if you listen to the video, it supports everything that I say. And Karl Marx twisted it and spun it and said, well, this is proof that Skip Claypool just wants the county engineer at the table. And so it's goofy the extent to which they go, but it's being enabled right now by Lake County commissioners, which is stunning to me. Morris Beveridge is the new commissioner and really doesn't understand. He thinks he can play nice with the devil, and unfortunately the devil's going to eat him. And so, but yeah, I'm not going to give up. We'll continue this, see where it goes. And I'm hoping to get enough people to join in. Yesterday, there was a person in the county commissioner meeting that came up to me after the meeting and said they've been listening to our program and they're there because of the program. So that gives me hope that people are listening and we're educating people. There's more people now that know what's going on with NOACA and it's not just NOACA. NOACA is one of the many bureaucratic organizations that tend to run. That's what our program this morning was about with Matt Heberbrand. You ought to have Matt Heberbrand on your program. I don't know if you know him or.
I don't know him, no.
He's a constitutional expert, a young guy, very smart, and knows the Ohio federal Constitution, knows the history really well in terms of how the Republic was put together by our founders and so forth. But we talked about this new government that we have, and it's really kind of an oligarchy, a combination with our corrupt political machine. Used to call that the Tammany Hall, but this is even worse. So Tammany Hall used to rule by greed and corruption and graft. The new system really rules for power, and it's a combination of our various elected officials. Like in Geauga County, that would be our auditor, prosecutor, and 2 of our county commissioners. The political machine enables itself. They work to help each other to stay elected and to conduct business. So they went after Tim Grindell, one of our probate judges, which he didn't go along with their program. They managed to finally get him suspended from office, but that was after years and years of attack and not paying the bills that he had a right to submit through his budget and everything. And so that's what they do. They operate as a machine to try and control the government levers to the detriment of people like myself and Jonathan and others.
And they're very good at it. They're very good at it, it would appear. Jonathan, I saw you nodding along a couple of points Skip made. Did you want to respond or react? You also looked a little surprised at some of what he just said.
No, actually, none of it's a surprise. I've heard this. I know these things. I'm in agreement. But the one thing that may be the shining beacon of hope here is the prospect of breaking free. And we started to touch on that a few moments ago, coming back to how could we possibly extricate ourselves from NOACA, get free of them. Skip actually, some years ago, worked with the Ohio Department of Education. I don't mean to step on your toes here, Skip. You can fill in any blanks or correct my paraphrasing. But there is a way for counties like Lorain, Medina, Lake, and Geauga to potentially break free from NOACA. We would do so under the current rules and regulations and guidelines by forming our own separate MPO. So Lake, in other words, is required to have a metropolitan planning organization or be part of one. Lake and Geauga
required by whom? Required by whom? They're
by that federal law, that the one that I mentioned started in 1962.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That
enforcing by what? Enforced by what? By withholding funds?
Yeah, by the flow of funds. So if you're not part of one, then you run the risk of not being part of some handouts of monies, federal and state and otherwise. Right. So grant dollars and those kinds of things. Some of them, remember I was delineating the money that NOACA actually controls and the stuff that they have no control over, but then want to claim credit for anyway. Like, look how generous we are. We're handing out this check for $60,000 or whatever. But it is certainly within our rights and an ability that we have to form separate MPOs. So Skip actually did an analysis of Lake and Geauga separating from Cuyahoga and forming our own MPO. That is allowed. It takes some political capital, and eventually I think the governor would have to sign off on it. But just using some raw numbers based on the analysis Skip did, both counties would end up significantly to the good with a lot more money. First thing we need to do is get people over this notion that the little bits of money that come in from NOACA are meaningful. They're not. Lake and Geauga and probably all 4 ring counties are paying in, I believe, way more than we're getting back from NOACA. The other thing, as I mentioned before, some of the money that gets handed out to counties like Geauga is going to come anyway. It gets handed through NOACA, but they're just a conduit. So I don't know if Skip maybe wants to chime in on the analysis that he did and what it might look like to shake free from NOACA.
Well, before you do that, Skip, let me just, you've mentioned 17 in Ohio alone, right? Mm-hmm. 17 MPOs. Name me a couple of the other ones. Would we be familiar with any of them? Because like I said, most people up here have heard of NOACA, maybe don't know it to the depth, that you do. And maybe until your very great explanation this morning of it all, can you name any others?
I actually just had a conversation yesterday with Kerry Coleman, who's running for Ohio 13, the federal congressional race. He's running against Amelia Sykes, and Akron has one. I might even still have the tab up. What's the Akron one called? It's similar.
AMATS. AMATS, SCATS, Eastgate. There's a number of them, 17 of them, as you said, in the state. And so, but they operate differently. So the federal law, 23 CFR 45310, talks about how an MPO is created. And there's another act that once the law stipulates that it needs to exist and how it's formed and so forth, then there's other law that's created that determines how it's operated and how it's funded. There was an act called the FAST Act. Now it's something else. I've lost track of the name. That actually talks about how the monies are divvied out. But NOACA gets its share after the federal government takes money and then hands it to the state. The state then divvies out money for the 18.4 cents a gallon gas tax. All of what NOACA is supposed to do has to do with the 18.4 cents a gallon gas tax and it all supposedly has to do with federal roads, period. Nothing else. They're not supposed to be climate change. They're not supposed to be doing economic development. They're not supposed to be doing land use planning. That's stuff they choose to do, not that they're mandated to do. So the federal government gives them a block grant back, and they do it in two ways. One of which, they give a direct dollar they call STPG dollars. NOACA gets about $35 million in those dollars. They get to control those dollars. Those are the gas tax dollars for federalized or federal roads. Outside of that, ODOT sets up pockets of money for specific things, roads, bridges, whatever, technology. And then you can apply for an MPO. If you get the membership card of being an MPO, you can apply for those bigger dollars, like the Vrooman Road project, which is a $30 million project in Lake County. That was an ODOT funded project, but you had to be an MPO to apply for those dollars. So if we were to separate Lake County and Geauga County, we take our money off their table. So NOACA gets $35 million. We take our share of that, but it's population driven. It's a math problem. How many people do you have? You multiply the number of people by a factor, and that's how much money you get. So we get about $6 million, Lake County and Geauga County. We take away from NOACA. That's the reason they fight it so hard.
Yeah.
Is because we're going to be taking money away from them. Why Lake County and Geauga County commissioners cannot see this? We don't, in Geauga County, we get $0 to maybe $1 million at most. Lake County gets maybe $500,000 to a couple $1 million. Well, if you add, let's say, best case scenario, we get $1 million from NOACA, and Lake County gets $2 million. That's $3 million. In my book, $3 million is far less than $6 million. And so, why the hell we wouldn't even think about it or consider it? I just shake my head, and I've said this to the commissioners. What the heck are you thinking about?
And you just explained why you're so dangerous to them. You just explained you're threatening their pockets. At the end of the day here, you're threatening their pockets short and long term. That's why you've got to be silenced. That's why they're coming for you so hard, right? I mean, ultimately, if it comes down to it, it's power, control, and money. And maybe not always in that order. Maybe money is first, because you're talking about something that would threaten, even if it's only $3 million of their dollars, $3 million more that would be coming your way.
But in addition to that, and this is the other dirty little detail that they don't even want to talk about, and this was told to me by ODOT. When I worked to create the formula that I just talked about, it wasn't me, because I don't know the formula. I reached out to an ODOT guy who was at that time responsible for MPOs, and he was a good guy, and he helped me quite a bit. And he gave me this little tip. He says, by the way, if you separate Lake County and Geauga County, you now get a membership card. You get to compete with NOACA for the big dollars. So it's not the little dollars, the $6 million that we take off the table. That's the pocket change. It's really the big dollars. Now we're qualified to go after the $30 million, $50 million, $100 million projects, and we compete directly with NOACA. Oh my God, they would have an absolute conniption fit if that happened.
Yeah.
But and so that's the reason they would fight it so hard. The governor and the ODOT doesn't want this to happen, because now they have to be the arbiters in those little turf battles, and they don't want that. They want this big organization, bureaucratic organization, to control everything, because it's easier for them, ODOT, and for the governor and all that. Politically, it's easier for them. So that that's one of the reasons they would resist this. But it is very simple to do. If you read the federal law, the process is very easy. You create an agreement between the two counties. Our county engineers could work out that agreement. You get the biggest cities and the two biggest cities, one in each county, to okay it, and then you go to the governor. That's it. That's all you have to do. So it's actually very simple, mechanically, not so easy politically.
Skip, wasn't it around $7 million you were thinking that between Lake and Geauga would be to the good?
Yes.
$7 million?
We get $6 million of the 18.4 cents a gallon gas tax dollars. And then on top of that, the government pays us 20% to manage everything. So we get an additional $1 million just to manage everything.
So just to Bob, to step in and clarify my position on the whole thing.
Please.
If I had a magic wand and we were able to go through federal government and just let's Department of Education the thing, get the thing wound down and put it to bed and just kill it. nationally. It's a disaster. It's a nightmare. It terrorizes communities and entire counties and regions. Short of that, if we can't do that, then we do have some legislators like Representative Mike Davila, who I believe is still working on the prospect of maybe passing something to rein in NOACA and other Ohio organizations like it. But if those fail, then by all means, why aren't people looking at the numbers? Why are people so afraid of just simple basic math? If your county is the good and makes more money and has more power, autonomy, and control, and if we can shed the far left liberal woke agenda that is being pumped out of Cuyahoga County, why in the heck are we not? Why aren't we looking at it? And in my county, I'm looking at our commissioners like, absolutely. You should be just set aside, clear your schedule and spend a couple of days, go into a boardroom, or actually better yet, make it an open meeting so we can all participate and listen in and just talk through the numbers. For heaven's sakes, find out if what Skip is saying is true. And for years, they've just ignored it. They will not answer to the prospect that we end up with more money, more autonomy, more power, more control if we simply break free from NOACA.
You know, we should follow the lead of the property tax team and do a public, because in Ohio, we can create a law, we the people, by petition. And so we should start a petition statewide and say, look, we're going to rein in and we're going to eliminate MPOs. In the state of Ohio, you can't have an MPO. And by the 10th Amendment, federal constitutional 10th Amendment, states' rights, we could say, yeah, you know, this federal law that you created, which is unconstitutional, yeah, we're not abiding by that. So forget it. We don't want to play. Give us our money back, and we'll call it even.
Yeah, you know, guys, the frustrating thing about it, to me, multiple frustrating things for obvious reasons, and everything they're doing to you, Skip, is extremely infuriating, more than just frustrating. And more than even just the money is the fact that there is no one willing to stand up to the wokeness of it all. Jonathan, you do unwoke investing, and everything you're talking about that NOACA is pushing and promoting is indeed woke left-wing garbage that infringes upon our rights. Our rights to live how we want to live. And just from that aspect alone, I would think there would be a lot more pushback from the people of the counties impacted, saying we want a bigger say. I mean, I don't understand how what you said at the very beginning, Jonathan, and I know we're getting a little bit off into the weeds here and a little bit longer than I wanted to, but we'll finish up with this. I don't understand how the other counties can accept being bullied by Cuyahoga County in terms of the votes. I mean, it's almost like the opposite of an electoral college. You know, everybody should have a say in this, a bigger say than what they do. One county cannot. It would be like us letting, you know, the populations of New York and Los Angeles, or New York and California, bigger picture, make all of the decisions for the flyover states that we talk about here. Those states have to have power as well, and equal representation. And I don't understand how the 4 other counties that are dominated by a Cuyahoga, not that they're all conservative minded, but why they are willing to be, redheaded stepchildren of daddy in the, in the Cuyahoga County office, is being told what they can and cannot have.
That's a great analogy, and I do get the feeling that NOACA and the people that sit on that board. By the way, Skip mentioned the name Grace Gallucci a few times. She's the president of NOACA currently. She has been for a while. I understand that she comes from a Chicago background, which may explain some things. But yeah, that is absolutely the way they treat us. I'm sorry, Bob, can you rephrase your question?
My big thing was about the woke aspect of it. The fact that so much of what they're doing, it would be one thing for them to be, dominating, the smaller counties or the less populated counties with this ridiculous vote in any circumstances. But the fact that they're forcing these, woke ideas and regulations on the people that they want to, with the bike lanes and with the traffic and the whole 9 yards. That's the one thing I would just expect more people in the counties to be rising up and demanding from their commissioners and their leadership that they stand up for themselves and for their rights a little bit more. That's all.
I remember now where I was going to go next, and that is Medina County. Actually, periodically, we've seen some terrific pushback from the commissioners in Medina County. There was a letter that they put together doing something similar to what Skip is consistently doing. It's calling BS on what they're doing and what they're asking for from NOACA. Many of us who were following this thing were very, very hopeful and like, oh, this is excellent. We're seeing some great spine from the commissioners in Medina County. But then recently, with this push to try and change the bylaws to silence Skip and remove him from the equation, mysteriously, the commissioners in Medina County, they cowered and approved the thing.
Wow.
Which is frustrating and surprising. We have great hope for them. Ultimately, it's going to take a few people to have a spine. And maybe, wouldn't it be great if Lorain County and Medina County teamed up, formed their own MPO, and then Lake County and Geauga County team up and form our own MPO and say, hey, Cleveland, you have just destroyed the roads and bridges. You are shown no skill and capability in doing what your actual job is, and we want no part of you. As you pump out these websites and these seminars and these questionnaires about all this woke agenda, you go ahead and have at it in Cuyahoga County. We want no part of it. That would be delightful.
I completely agree, but that would require spines, as you just pointed out. And I'll ask you, Skip, maybe you know more real quick on Lorain. Lorain County, which is my county, recently underwent a bit of a shift in the last 10 years or so because it had been a very, very blue dominated. The two biggest cities in our county are Lorain and Elyria, and they're very blue cities, and the entire board of commissioners was Democrat. Just recently, it shifted. A Republican eventually got elected, and now it's all three of them are Republicans. But I don't know if they're acting Republican because I don't know what they're doing with NOACA. So can you speak at all to why a county that has become a little bit more balanced and actually has three Republican commissioners, isn't pushing back against what NOACA is about?
Yes. Yeah. You've got three rhinos in there who are, they've got our label, but they're like many. Years ago, I asked a question in a NOACA meeting: how many people have read? And I listed, the federal law that creates NOACA. It's a very easy, short read. How many people have read the law that creates this MPO? So you understand what we're supposed to be doing. You know how many people raised their hand? Me and Grace Galucci. How many people have read the FAST Act that governs how we're supposed to operate as an organization? Again, nobody raised their hand. So the problem is we got all these people who sit around there, and it's all politics. They go there to eat lunch, and they rubber stamp things. Nobody asks. Well, that's not true. John Mara out of Lake County is very engaged, and he's the alternate for John Pleshnik, who is wishy-washy kind of on many things over there. So
strong on the property tax abolition, though, right?
He's very strong on the property tax. He and I disagree on the what should be done at the end of the day, because I'm really fearful that they're going to push for regionalized schools, which would be a disaster. But because it's like NOACA, regionalized anything is a disaster. You need local control close to the people to keep control. Sure. That's what Matthew and I talked about this morning on the program. If you're going to maintain proper government, then you want to make sure the people are close to the people that are governing them and able to control them. But that said, so Lorain has got some wishy-washy people who just tend to go along. This whole idea of changing the bylaws, this Article 9 change that they made, not to get into the weeds too much, but it contained the only firewall the ring counties had to keeping the membership kind of in control, because it required a 5-county ratification for any change. They did away with that. And so now the only county that needs to approve a change to their membership is the county that's specifically involved. That means the board now gets to determine by vote what the membership looks like. There's no protection any longer. There's no guardrails for Cleveland. Cleveland had guard, and they have already got a supermajority. But now they can control what Geauga County representatives are and what the Lorain County representatives are. And so that's very scary to me. More than that, they created a change in Article 4, which now allows or creates conflict within a county. So by board vote, the county commissioner board vote, the board gets to determine who the members are. Well, that violates civil rights, and that's my lawsuit. But that sets up a conflict, because now you allow two county commissioners to take a third county commissioner off the table, which creates conflict, and you're taking those votes off the table. So you're disenfranchising the voters for that individual, and that's a real problem. So they really mucked things up, and Lorraine allowed that, Medina allowed that, Lake County allowed that. Why they can't see that? You know, John Plechnik is a law professor, for gosh sakes.
Oh.
There's a term called an entrenchment clause, and Article 9 was an entrenchment clause, and he should know that. And I brought it up in a meeting. I put everybody on notice. Look, guys, you cannot do this. And yet the attorneys, Aaron Harrison out of Medina is an attorney, for goodness sakes. You would think he would at least go look at the law and see, you know, what
a
they're
lawyer
doing.
looking at the law.
But,
what are you talking about? That's crazy.
They're choosing not to. They're choosing to just go along because it's easy and they can rubber stamp things, and which has always frustrated me. You know, best government is government that's questioned by the people that are, you know, at that table. Everybody should be asking hard questions. You get the best answers.
Literally what we were founded upon. Exactly that. Exactly that.
But nobody asks questions. They just kind of go along, and it's easy because they go get their lunch and get out.
Well, guys,
and so that's the most frustrating.
Guys, I got to cut it here. I'm well past my time here, and I got to make room for Marcell Strbich, who could very well be our next Secretary of State. He's got an amazing story to tell. That'll be coming up here. But Jonathan, I want to thank you for coming on. Obviously, Jonathan, this was the time we had scheduled together to talk about regionalism, NOACA. We didn't even get into Planned Partners, by the way, which I want to talk to you about too. And unwoke investing and so forth. But great stuff from you, and thanks for ceding some of your time to Skip. And Skip, I appreciate you answering. This wasn't planned. Jonathan, we kept talking about you and what they're doing to you, changing the bylaws to dump you. And I figured, you know what, is Skip around? So I just did a quick little text and I sent the link, and you answered like a champ. So.
Yeah, your timing is perfect. Yeah. I just finished the other show.
It just worked out perfectly. Voice of Geauga is the other show, by the way. Remind everybody about that. In fact, do I have a little Facebook, a little glimpse at that? Yeah, just real quick before we go. See if I can throw that up on the screen. That's the Facebook page for Voice of Geauga. As you can see on the radio on 1330 AM, 101.5 FM, and then it is streaming everywhere as well, including on Rumble. So make sure that you do indeed give these guys a watch and listen and learn, because what they're talking about is extraordinarily important, not just for Geauga County, but for the entire Northeast Ohio region that we were just discussing as well. So Jonathan Broadbent, Skip Claypool, thank you guys both for being here and for playing such a huge role in looking out for the people in Northeast Ohio. This will be one of many conversations to come, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bob.
All right. I appreciate you. All right. We need to do this before I clear the decks for Marcell Strbich as well. This is really important. That's not the one. Where's the really important one? This is the one that I wanted to show. This episode is brought to you by Mark King and Keeping Medicare Simple. Medicare Advantage open enrollment is happening right now through March 31st. And if you're on Medicare, this matters to you. And if you're in Northeast Ohio, I want to personally recommend someone I know and trust, Mark King. I've known Mark for years, and I've referred Medicare recipients to him time and time again because he puts people first and keeps Medicare simple. If you're thinking about switching Advantage plans or even returning to original Medicare, call Mark's office today at 440-832-8936 to schedule an appointment. And for clear, easy-to-understand information, visit the user-friendly website keepingmedicaresimple.com. When it comes to Medicare, I trust Mark King, and you can too. All right, there you go. Thank you to Mark, who again is one of our foundational sponsors, got in very, very early here, and in fact was the first in for this program as a chief sponsor. And, you know, I will only let and partner with groups, businesses, and organizations that share the mission, that share the values that we have here, which literally borrowed directly from Charlie Kirk and Turning Point: faith, family, and freedom. That is what it is all about, and it's what we fight for every day. It's why we seek to have such a great impact and influence in Ohio politics and nationally as well. because we've got a mission, and these guys are part of it. So thank you to Mark, and thank you to AFP, Americans for Prosperity. Anybody else interested in partnering with us and having your message heard by thousands of people who are downloading and viewing this podcast every day, whether they're listening to it and watching it live stream in the morning or watching it later throughout the day. We are having massive numbers of impressions being reached as well by sharing clips of these programs on social media all over the place. Follow us and follow this show on all of the different social media platforms. Make sure you are downloading. Make sure you are following, subscribing, and supporting us on the Rumble channel on the for the live stream, and then also make sure you get into the locals community. A little reminder: tonight we do have a planned locals town hall meeting for the Unfiltered insiders. You know who you are. Those of you who are paid supporters who are in the locals community, 9 p.m. tonight, we'll be back in the chat. Doing a live event in order to plan our next steps. It is very, very hush-hush down low right now as far as what we are planning, but those who know. And if you don't know and you want to be a part of that, all you've got to do is click the join button underneath the video screen on your Rumble channel right now. Click the join button to become a member of Locals. You can become a member of the Locals community for free, by the way. Participate, engage, post, share, react, comment. That's fantastic, and that's all free. If you want to be an insider, though, obviously that means being a paid supporter, and you will be invited to events like tonight's private town hall meeting, as well as have access to interviews that are embargoed from the general public until we decide to release them. And right now, there is an insiders only interview that I did with Kurt Schlichter, retired U.S. Army Colonel Kurt Schlichter, Town Hall, senior columnist at townhall.com, author and more. He is a conservative champion and hero. And it was one of my favorite interviews I've done in a very long time, to be honest with you. It was a full hour that Schlichter and I did together. And that is right now available for insiders only on the Locals channel. So I want to make sure everybody knows about that. All right. We're going to stay in Ohio now. Obviously, we were very hyper-local with the Northeast Ohio and the NOACA danger that they represent, obviously. But now we want to talk, well, I thought we were going to talk with him, but it looks like he has disappeared from the green room. He was there for a moment, maybe a tech issue, but we're going to get him right back on. There he is again. I told you this story at the beginning. In fact, before the show started this morning, I had this on the screen. Let me throw it up there because I think it's a very telling graphic. Let's pop it up there. Yeah, look at that. Marcell Strbich, not for sale. I didn't know anybody thought he was. Well, apparently they did. Marcell put this up on his Twitter X account last night and on Facebook as well, I believe. I will not compromise my mission, values, principles, and beliefs in exchange for my silence. He says that a state central committee member tried to bribe him out of the race for Secretary of State, promising him a job in the soon-to-be Secretary of State's office if he just gets out of the way. Needless to say, Marcell Strbich was not about that. And I wouldn't have expected anything less. But I talked to him yesterday or texted with him yesterday. And I said, Marcell, we need to tell the story. Can you come on this morning? And despite being in the middle of heavy campaigning late last night and early this morning, he carved out a little bit of time for us here. So let's welcome Marcell Strbich back to our program. Marcell, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning. Good to be here. And yeah, it was a long night.
It looks like it and sounds like it. And it sounds like it's getting longer. Every day is getting longer now because you're no longer just competing for Secretary of State with your primary opponent, Robert Sprague. You're competing with a machine, maybe, or maybe it was a one-off. Maybe it was just a rogue individual. I don't know, that are doing more than just making you compete with your, with your ideas and your campaign, talking points, but now you've got to deal with people trying to subvert the election process by trying to coax you out of it. Marcell, tell us what happened.
Well, I got a call on Sunday, and the thing is, I've not been asking for anything other than a fair run. For the last year, I've been all over this state. I've been building a grassroots army, Bob, as you know. I've been building enthusiasm, anticipating in 26 we're going to need a candidate that's properly engaged with the voter on the issues of registration, business registration, voter registration issues, and other solutions, right? This is a campaign that's not built on slogans, and it's resonating, right? We saw polling come out in the last month showing we're up 8 in this race. We've got a plus 47 when people know what we're about, all the things in terms of the desire for people to want to vote for this outside candidacy running for Secretary of State in Ohio. And everything's trending correctly. There's important counties that are coming along for endorsements. There's important national, state level endorsements. Right to Life Action recently endorsed us. All of these different groups came together, and I thought, well, you're doing well. You just got to keep grinding this thing out. And I get a call out of nowhere on Sunday, and it's, if you've done so well, Marcell, but you're still not going to win. You have zero chance. And I just don't buy that, and I don't understand why some people feel compelled to try to draw me out to suspend my campaign in the lead up to the May 5th election and try to broker some kind of arrangement where I could work in the Secretary of State's office, I guess, when I'm the one that's petitioning the people of Ohio to decide if they believe I'm the person that could be the executive. And I know I can, and my background and history indicate that I can.
So Marcell, for those who don't know Marcell Strbich, you should by now, because he spent the last 2 years championing election reform in the state of Ohio. And he has worked tirelessly trying to open the eyes of current Secretary of State Frank LaRose to some things that maybe he was not aware of, things that could be done better. Marcell has been on board, like I said, and fighting this fight for 2 years, and now he's been campaigning for many, many months. He is a 20-year retired Air Force intelligence officer, among other things in his career. And Marcell, for 2 years, I've been interviewing you and listening to you and learning from you because you study this better than anybody else. But what really opened my eyes is the last time you and I spoke last month when you were responding to the fraud issues in the state of Ohio. Massive amounts of fraud. And as we are all looking for and looking to and waiting for our state office holders to do something about this and tell us when and how accountability is going to happen, and the clawing back of fraudulent funds is going to happen, you stepped up and said, when I'm Secretary of State, I will not only secure Ohio's elections, I will not only clean up the rolls, I will not only make sure that the laws are followed, I will also, and that the office has a role in sniffing out, investigating, and stopping the fraud as well. I haven't heard any of that from your opponent, Marcell, and that's one of the reasons why I think you're resonating with so many people and collecting endorsements left and right. Do you think that's why this offer, if you will, this suggestion that you step away came to you?
Yeah, and there's some other things going on here too, right? The vice president has weighed in on a competitive race, and so it's putting pressure on the Republican Party and some of the grandees who don't like that necessarily, that intervention. I'm talking about the treasurer's race. I think the treasurer, in this case, one of the candidates wants the party endorsement, the other one doesn't. I tend to align with no party endorsements in competitive primaries, especially candidates that are in the lead or that are resonating with the voters. Why are we working so hard? That suggests something, doesn't it, about my opponent? He's too weak to win on his own. He claims he has the money, but if he has such money, where's the authenticity? Where's his genuine support across the state? I don't know of any constituency groups that are clamoring for him at this time. I do know that he's built relationships, which is natural in Columbus over 15 years. I know that some people begin to form friendships. And so that's not what the voters looking to 44 members of the state central committee to decide for them, right, Bob? They're looking for us to bring forward the strongest candidate to win in the general. That's people's logic. Politicians' logic is different, right? A newcomer introduces uncertainty and risk from their perspective. Because as you can see from yesterday in my desire to externalize the conversation that happened to me on Sunday, I'm not for sale. I don't need this job. I'm taking this on as a burden, because if we don't address these fundamental issues, where is our state going to go? That's why I was key on bringing these points up about what the Secretary of State can do to look at business registration and identify indicators after the fact of fraud potentially, and then utilize the resources within that office to then work alongside other executive branch offices. And the thought and process is so simple, but it doesn't seem to be exercised because of lack of political will. My opponent's memorizing my lines. He's running with the positions now. He sounds so much like me more and more. I take that as a compliment, but I have no confidence that he has the understanding to execute my agenda. So I'm continuing in this race.
Yeah, repeating your lines and parroting them, essentially stealing them, plagiarizing them is one thing. Having the ability and the willingness to follow through and implement them is another thing. And that's, of course, what I think is resonating with a lot of people. Marcell, I want to share a video here because you're familiar with it. It's one of yours, and I want people to watch this, and I want you to speak to this aspect of the race that you are in. Here we go.
Ohio has a political game of musical chairs. The governor used to be the attorney general. The lieutenant governor was just appointed to the U.S. Senate. The auditor is running for attorney general. The attorney general jumped in, then out of the governor's race. The secretary of state is running for auditor. And the treasurer? First he wanted to be governor. For the right reasons, he said. Then flip-flopped to run for secretary of state. Confused? So are most Ohioans. But you know who's not confused? Marcell Strbich, combat veteran, election integrity advocate, husband, father. Marcell Strbich isn't a career politician. He's a political outsider who wants one job: Ohio Secretary of State. While Robert Sprague plays political musical chairs, Marcell Strbich is getting results. He's written election integrity legislation introduced in the Ohio legislature. He sued the Montgomery County Board of Elections in the Ohio Supreme Court and won. And he's serving on a national election task force in Washington, D.C. Marcell Strbich is making Ohio's elections safer, while his opponent just waits for the music to stop. Marcell Strbich for Secretary of State, because actions speak louder than the sounds of political games in Columbus.
Marcell, that is a very, very powerful ad, and kudos for explaining all of that. When we talk about the musical chairs game, we talk about some of these state office holders really not necessarily being interested in that office. It's just the next office because they want to be career politicians. It's a very effective ad, in my opinion. It's also a very dangerous one, because you are literally now just, standing up right in the faces of the Ohio Republican political establishment and saying, I am calling all of you out for this. In order to win, you're going to need some allies among them. And I don't mean in the primary, but I mean in a general election, you're going to need them to get all behind you if you do win this primary. So Tell me about the thinking here, because you are exposing and condemning and criticizing the entire ORP.
Well, I don't think I'm criticizing the entire ORP. I've made clear that there are some individuals within the ORP. I have excellent relationships.
Okay, and I apologize for that.
Yeah,
that that's a mischaracterization. Okay. Right. The individuals who are part of the ORP.
Well, Bob, I'll tell you where you're right. In certain instances, some will interpret it that way. Some will institutionalize themselves as though they are. And that has more to do with their mindset. And the problem of that mindset is that they're there to serve the voters. And so some think that they are more informed than the voters. I think when the voters have a chance to decide on their own, we've done pretty well. We have Senator Bernie Moreno. He's rising star in the Senate. He's taken on a number of issues he said he would do. You have now Vice President Vance. If I recall, and I think you do, it wasn't exactly like the red carpet was rolled out over there in Columbus for either of those two gentlemen. And it's very interesting now because they're weighing in on certain things, certain candidates, certain issues. And, I'm watching all of this as a first comer to the scene, not to Columbus, because I've been there many times to bring the cases and issues forward that the people of Ohio and that the president, frankly speaking, has called on Ohio to address for years and hasn't seen results on. So the actions of a few do not parlay necessarily the outcomes for the many, but, I want to get ahead of that. I want them to understand that this would be a strategic mistake to endorse on February 20th when they meet. And why? It has less to do with me, and it has more to do with the voters who have now seen that I am garnering their interests. I am not pushing this forward so to make myself a commodity like many of them do. I think the issue was they assumed I want a job. I want a job, but I want to earn their job. I don't want any job like my opponent. I want to do the job. And that means I have to be the executive, because I know that if I'm not, no matter what I say will not necessarily be executed. And that's the difference. And if people had actually known or cared to know what I am about, which they didn't do their research, or they assumed or projected themselves onto me and said, surely this guy will just take it and we won't have the headache or the burden of doing this. So they need to think very clearly about this. Whether they like me or not, it's neither here nor there. I would work with any and all of them, even though it's obvious that they have rotated these positions for some time. I'm not judging that. Some of these people want to be, and they pride themselves on being in government and having, like my competitor says, he's tried and tested. That's his leading message to people. Yet you can't find a single accomplishment that he led that stood out that people know. And that's why 84% of Ohioans going into the primary don't know who he is. And that's a person that spent millions of dollars. I've spent 1/10 of that, okay, off of small dollar donations, no PAC money. And yet, how am I leading by 8 points? And for the voter, do you want somebody who doesn't have that name ID? Who was the lowest vote getter in 2022 out of all his peers? I personally, as a voter, don't want to go in the general with a weak opponent because I understand that the person that's going to be running is going to be aggressive against the Republican. And if he can't handle me and he's got to run to the ORP, then how's he going to handle the Democrat?
That's a fair question. Marcell, going back to the bribe, the coaxing, whatever, the attempt to get you to get out of the race by saying, hey, we'll hire you to work in the office of the next secretary. Are you intending at all to identify that person at any point? And second of all, do you think you know on whose behalf that person spoke? And do you think this was a message that was being sent by a larger organization to you, or was it a rogue individual who just kind of said, here's something we might be able to do? How are you gonna follow this?
Bob, I don't know. None of these things in my mind happen in isolation because they're too big of a thing to talk about, or for somebody to have the so-called authority to talk to me about these things. I don't know if this person operates in good faith or not good faith. I did not feel appreciative of the fact that I wasn't asked about this and whether this is something that I thought was desired or wanted on my part. So from this standpoint, I'm not trying to make this person right now the key part of what's taking place. I think that would take away from it, and then it would force the conversation about that person. I'd like to talk about the grander issue of these type of arrangements and how corruptive of an influence it is on us in the state and in our party. And for sure, I'm one of many that's been presented with some arrangement that could be worked out if they, walk away from the whole thing. And they just got to know here, people have, I think, dismissed me and taken this candidacy of the people for granted for a long time. They're not gonna be able to do that. I've set my mind to running and finishing the race, whatever the outcome is going to be. And as far as at some point, we'll have to see what the ORP does. Now, if the ORP goes ahead and endorses, I think it'd be appropriate to talk more about it, talk about the involvement of others. But right now, I'd like to see what the ORP does. And I think the position they should take is no endorsement in this race. And I should have the opportunity to run a level campaign without extra mailers, discounted mailers going to my opponent, without additional slate cards the party does for my opponent. All that's unnecessary if my opponent truly has the resources to win.
Marcell, I agree, by the way, about no endorsement in this race. Is it the uniqueness of this race that makes you say that there should be no endorsement here? And the reason I ask that is, how do you feel about the way the governor's race has gone and the fact that the ORP did endorse very, very early on before other people even got in? Because now some of the other quote unquote outsider candidates who are running in the primary against Vivek Ramaswamy are screaming there should have been no endorsement here either. So is there a parallel there, or are they two different types of races? How do you feel about that?
Well, every race is unique in and of itself. In the past, in the Central Committee, they used to package all these races at the Central Committee, and then they'd vote like in one block. I understand they're not going to do that this time. They're going to evaluate every individual race for consideration, which is better because prior chairman, again, if they keep their word, but prior chairman would basically vote on a slate of races, and then it's a bulk endorsement, and that's so wrong on a number of levels.
I agree 100%.
But things are evolving. Now, as far as that race that you talked about last year, it left a bad taste in a lot of voters' mouths. Now, many people looked at it and it was multifaceted. It looked like the governor was trying to come in and influence that at the last minute with Jim Tressel, which got folks off the sidelines who normally would never endorse and probably won't endorse or vote to endorse in my race either. And they felt compelled to not see this governor after how many years he's been on top to do that. And so he actually caused the part of that. And then we had the involvement at the national level with the candidate coming in. I don't know all the details of it because I was just starting my campaign. But what I do know is I hear it often on the campaign trail. And I think that a lot of members came out of that with competitor opponents. I think 3/4 of the state central committee has a primary opponents now that they have to run against. So a lot of them are looking at this and saying, what came of that? Was that worth it? Did I ever want to be a part of that? Some have second guessed it. And I think to double down now in a week or whatever, in a week and a half, and do that all over again is really asking for a sizable portion of the Ohio Republican voter to be upset and to potentially not participate in the general 2026 election. And part of my message to them, because I will have 5 minutes to communicate along with my opponent to this body, part of my message will be, think about what the implications of this are very closely. Again, the voters are on knife's edge, and some of them, about wanting to support. And if we don't have the base, which is what I mostly represent, and we don't have, let's say, traditional Republicans that have, played a role in the party for many years in positions of authority, and their surrogates, then we can potentially lose the 2026 election in any number of races. And I'm trying to be the guy that uplifts the Republican Party. Again, fair process means if I lose in a fair way, meaning no endorsement, I can come back and say, okay, guys, we gave it our best. Let's all beat the Democrats, and I could be a very unifying force. If that doesn't happen, look, no one's going to listen to me. They're going to be that upset about it. So I'm not going to be able to bring a large block of voters because they're going to say, no, you tried, we respect you, but we're not voting Republican. At that point, it'll be out of my hands. And so from that perspective, this is one of those flashpoints where, at least 23 members of the state central committee need to vote in that first vote and say, we're not going to endorse in the Secretary of State's race. They have to prevail. Because if they don't, I can't predict the outcome, but I don't get the sense it'll be good for Republicans.
I think that's a very well argued point, and I hope they are listening to that. Marcell, want to ask one last thing before I announce something, and that is about money. You brought up the individual who basically tried to talk you into giving up your campaign in exchange for a job, said you can't win, so get out. I assume they meant in the general. You absolutely can win the primary. As you pointed out, you've got a poll that shows you're leading by 8 points, and your name recognition is close to being on par with that of a career guy in Robert Sprague. But in the general, do you have the resources to win a general election fight and make sure that we do have you in that office as opposed to a Democrat?
You know what happens when you win the primary, Bob? You get everybody comes on board. The party unites. It's the same pattern. National support comes in, money comes in, it pours in. So yes, the two candidates, in this case, myself and my opponent, we beat each other up. We spend money. He spends it on mailers. I spend it on this and that. And then what happens is a bunch of new sources of money come in because a lot of donors don't like to even give in the primary. They wait to see who the final person is. So this isn't going to be a question of a lack of resources. And by the way, the current cash on hand I have is more than the so-called leading or presumed Democrat opponent. So this is a false argument that's designed to make the incumbent who thinks has the structural advantage, the nod to give them, the push to become the presumptive nominee based on the variables the party creates for them. So I don't think it's a question of not going to have enough resources. It's certainly not going to be a question of me not working my tail off in the last 5 months from May to November to win, because you can see my work ethic is everywhere. I was in Youngstown last night, going to be in Muskingum County, going down to Southeast Ohio and Appalachia tonight. I'm going to come back home, and then I'm going to go to Brown County tomorrow, or the day after, for an endorsement consideration. So, I mean, we're going to work that, and that's going to work itself out.
Yeah, your work ethic is really something to behold. You know what your work ethic is? It's that of a combat Air Force airmen. You know, I mean, that's what you are. And I can tell you approach your campaign the same way you did your job in the Air Force. And that is with 100% commitment and with every single ounce of energy in your body. And I have seen that, which is why, Marcell, and it's funny, you just kind of mentioned, people, not committing resources until, primary is decided and so forth. And I've said this to you privately, and I'm going to say it publicly now. I have, in all of the years I've been covering Ohio politics and doing a show, and I've been on the radio in the state for 25 of my 28 years in radio, or now in the podcast world. I've never endorsed in a Republican primary, primarily because you pick your candidate, and then if the other person hears that and they win, I'm never going to have access to them. And as a broadcaster and as a public voice that a lot of people turn to get information, I need to have access to our office holders. And so I've always said I'm not going to pick somebody in a primary only to have that person lose, and now I'm going to be ghosted by the winner because some of them are that petty.
Yeah, sure.
And it's why I wasn't going to endorse in this race or any other. And I'll say this right up front. This is not a personal slight at Robert Sprague in any way. I think he's done an admirable job as a treasurer. But I have decided, because I've been listening to you and talking with you and learning from you, because of your extraordinary knowledge of Ohio election law, quoting chapter and verse, and then with practical ideas on how to strengthen election integrity, I feel like this state needs you. I feel like this state needs you to do the job that a secretary, not just in elections, but in particular that. In the Secretary of State's office, I think we need you. And so I'm kind of breaking from my own personal rule, and I'm throwing caution to the wind here, Marcell. I know you well enough, and I feel like I've learned from you enough to know that you are the person that I'm going to vote for, and you are the person that now has my full and total endorsement for Secretary of State. So I just want you to know that, and I want to make that very public.
Thank you. I recall you being right there at the beginning with me in Medina. And you're right. You're a loved figure because of your consistency, your dedication to reporting on the issues. And people continue to benefit from the knowledge you bring all of us as you follow these contemporary issues. And you take us from one segment of what's taking place in our lives. And I'm going to continue to trust you as well, Bob. And I hope that, as you embark in this regard in your new course with this platform, that you continue to see success, and people will know that they can come to this network and they can hear you, and they know they're going to get straight talk. So thank you. It's a privilege. I know that didn't come without real deliberation. And I will not let you down. I will not let these listeners of yours who've gotten to know each other and know us through these interactions. We need strength. We need character. We need backbone in these positions. That is the one way we will restore integrity across our government. So thank you. It's my honor.
And those are the things that you have in great volume: strength and integrity and backbone. And that's the reason I feel this way. Marcell Strbich, thank you. I appreciate you coming here to talk to the folks here. And obviously, we'll have you back many, many times, and hopefully over the course of several years as you report back to the constituents who made you Secretary of State in the state of Ohio. Thank you, Marcell.
God bless everybody.
All right. There you go. That's Marcell Strbich. He is an amazing individual and somebody that I am indeed proud to endorse in this race. It's not something that I considered lightly, as you just heard him say, and as I explained. And I'm very, very hopeful as I roll this dice from an influence standpoint. That if things don't go that way, and that, Robert Sprague happens to be the next treasurer of the state of Ohio, or excuse me, he is the treasurer, the next Secretary of State in the state of Ohio. I hope that, he still says, yeah, I need to reach the constituents. I need to reach people, and I'm going to go to the places where people can hear what I need, what needs to be said. And I hope he will, would come on and understand that. But like I said, some politicians and candidates, and including incumbents, are petty. And I certainly hope, that either one of these guys would be like that, and that they would still want to be heard on a program that people trust, that they come to for fair questions and answers, sometimes debates, but also most importantly, getting the policy answers that the American people, or in our case, the Ohio people, want. So I'm doing that. I'm endorsing Marcell Strbich for Secretary of State. And I think he's the best man for the job, and I think Ohio needs him. I really do. And I hope that doesn't, like I said, ruffle too many feathers, but it is what it is. All right, we went a little bit long here because we got Marcell on a little bit late. He had some campaign events. He a little bit late. Also very glad to Jonathan Broadbent and Skip Claypool on a little bit earlier, both from Geauga County, talking about the extraordinary circumstances we find ourselves in with respect to NOACA and the fact that regionalism may take away all of our rights to local government and our own decision making. So it's a huge, huge issue we'll stay on top of as well. I didn't get a chance to get back because we went so long with Jonathan and Skip to the Cleveland Plain Steamer and the Cleveland.com just stampede of stupid and their just real, true, honest commitment to dishonesty. I didn't get a chance to get back there. I will go back there tomorrow. All right, that I can say. Also on tomorrow's live stream and program, we will have the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jim Jordan, will be live with me tomorrow morning in the 8 o'clock hour. You're going to want to hear that because he's going to tell us all about today's hearings in judiciary with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. A lot of people have been asking, when are we going to get something done? Hopefully we'll get some answers today from the Attorney General, and Jim Jordan will report on that tomorrow with us. And then, of course, since it's Thursday, we will have Dr. Everett Piper back on for his weekly visit as well. So don't miss that. Also, don't forget, tonight, Unfiltered Insiders. If you are a Locals community member and you are a paid supporter as an Unfiltered Insider, tonight, an exclusive with just you and me, we will get together at 9 o'clock on Locals in the chat, and we will indeed plan our upcoming event. We're having a meetup, the details of which are being kept very, very hush-hush until we are ready to make an announcement, but the planning stages continue. Remember, Rumble is the show. Rumble is the hub, but Locals is the war room. That's where we get together and do our work together. So I need all of my partners to be there tonight at 9 o'clock. If you want to become one, click the join button you see right now on the Rumble screen. Click that join button. You become a member of the Locals community for free. But if you choose to become a paid member, you'll be an ultimate Unfiltered Insider, and you'll be able to have these town hall meetings with us and have access to special content that no one else gets at that time, including the interview that is right now available to insiders with Kurt Schlichter. All right, that's it for now. Chatters, thank you. Appreciate all of you. God bless. Thanks to my guests. And don't forget, bring a friend. Tomorrow morning to the next live stream, bring a friend to the chat room. I don't care who they are, but if you know people who are conservative, who don't know this show is out there, bring them in and invite them to bring some other people as well. We've got to grow this community to have the impact that we know we can and will. So until we talk live tomorrow morning, don't forget, keep those notifications turned on so that you can find out new content that we're dropping here as well. Thanks, everybody. Be well, be safe, and stay free. We will see you next time.